Is the only time he's ever been asked about his association with Bill Ayers, the unrepentant terrorist from the Weather Underground, who on 9/11 of all days in the New York Times was saying, "I don't regret setting bombs. I don't think we did enough." When asked about it by the Politico, David Axelrod said they have a friendly relationship and that they had done a number of speeches together and that they sat on a board together. Is that a question you might ask?
Well, I'm taking notes right now.
September 11, 2001, of all days, there was an article in the New York Times, and there are a number of quotes about Bill Ayers, and the Politico had in there the comments about from David Axelrod. I think that's an interesting question that nobody in the media has really brought up. We've highlighted a little bit more here on this program, but let me see if I can help you. You want any more questions?
Yeah, keep going.
The Chicago Reader talked about and has comments of Barack Obama why he attended the Million Man March.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know that, I don't think.
That's pretty. Didn't he write about that in his book?
I don't remember that in particular, but I know that he was quoted extensively in the Chicago Reader, December 8th, I forget the year, going back a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
My memory's not that good, George.
So I gave George the suggestion. Now, you notice at that point, he'd never heard about Bill Ayers. He'd never heard about Bernardine Dorn. He'd never heard about the fact that Obama had started his career in the home of unrepentant terrorists. He didn't know that he sat on boards with Ayers, with Bill Ayers. He didn't know that he gave speeches with Ayers. I mean, that's a pretty extensive, friendship between the two of them. They never asked him about his comment about a typical white grandma. What's a typical white grandmother? Never asked about his his comments, white folks' greed runs a world in need. They took for granted. He said, I barely knew the guy, Jeremiah Wright. But yet, his speech, Audacity of Hope, or what was the name of the book? Dreams, I think it was Audacity of Hope, was taken right out of a Reverend Wright speech. We looked into his belief, even talked in his books about black liberation. They never asked him. So the only time they asked about his relationship with an unrepentant terrorist was because I told George Stephanopoulos to ask it. Listen.
On this issue, general theme of patriotism in your relationships, a gentleman named William Ayers. He was part of the Weather Underground in the 1970s. They bombed the Pentagon, the Capitol, and other buildings. He's never apologized for that. And in fact, on 9/11, he was quoted in the New York Times saying, "I don't regret setting bombs. I feel we didn't do enough." An early organizing meeting for your state Senate campaign was held at his house, and your campaign has said you're friendly. Can you explain that relationship for the voters and explain to Democrats why it won't be a problem?
This is a guy who lives in my neighborhood, who's a professor of English in Chicago, who I know and who I have not received some official endorsement from. He's not somebody who I exchange ideas from on a regular basis. And the notion that somehow, as a consequence of me knowing somebody who engaged in detestable acts 40 years ago when I was 8 years old, somehow reflects on me and my values doesn't make much sense, George. This kind of game in which anybody who I know, regardless of how flimsy the relationship is, somehow their ideas could be attributed to me. I think the American people are smarter than that. They're not going to suggest somehow that is reflective of my views, because it obviously isn't.
So he starts his political career in the guy's house, sits on boards with the guy, gives speeches with the guy, and he's just some guy in the neighborhood, some flimsy relationship. If it was Donald Trump, do you think he would have been asked more than once? And which gets me to my point. I said journalism is dead. Well, what have we learned today from the WikiLeaks dump? We learned that debate moderators were aligned with Hillary's campaign. We got documents now that prove how corrupt and biased your media is. For example, on full display in the second debate, part of the latest email campaign, the media alliance we now see, but Clinton on numerous media outlets, etc., that internal documents demonstrate a central component of the Clinton campaign strategy is ensuring that journalists that they believe are favorable to Clinton are tasked to report the stories the campaign wants circulated. Wow. And then the document can be seen here. Then they labeled the names of the people. It's so many of them. John Heilemann, Rachel Maddow, Ruth Marcus, Chris Matthews, Dana Milbank, Andrea Mitchell, Nora O'Donnell, Robin Roberts, Eugene Robinson. Let's see, Jeff Zeleny, Karen Tumulty, George Stephanopoulos, Mara Liasson, John Carl, John Heilemann, Chris Hayes, Mark Halperin, Ron Fournier, Howard Feynman, Ronan Farrow, Maureen Dowd, E.J. Dion, Mika Brzezinski, Wolf Blitzer, and it goes on and on. And what else did we learn? We learned, in fact, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are now funding ISIS. And Hillary knew it. Why did she accept money from the Saudis if she knew that? We learned that Univision was urging Hillary to hit Trump harder. We learned that John Harwood of CNBC, even though he's a debate moderator, is caught on these WikiLeaks advising her campaign. We know the New York Times was giving Hillary veto power on their quotes. Hey, Jim Rutenberg from the New York Times, you wouldn't put one of my quotes in. Not one. I gave you an hour. I wasted my time talking to you. Unbelievable. And we got the Boston Globe coordinating to maximize her presence in the paper. And then we've got, oh, poor Donna Brazil. I saw her the other day. I've always liked Donna. I got along with her. I know she's a hardcore liberal. She was busted. The DNC chief shared CNN town hall questions. Now, she put out a statement denying she gave debate questions. She didn't mention town halls. Used Benghazi as a distraction from the email scandal. 4 dead Americans used it as an excuse not to talk about her emails. And, of course, the campaign was also caught discussing it all with the Department of Justice. We're cooked. It's such a conspiracy at such a high level. It exposes such deep corruption, such absolute collusion. Colluding with the White House, colluding with the Department of Justice, colluding with the FBI, colluding with abusively biased, corrupt media. Donald Trump said yesterday, if it wasn't for the media, I'd be up 10 points. We know now the media is in her pocket. And what I said 8 years ago is more relevant today than when I told you then. Journalism is dead. And who's come under more fire in this campaign? Me. The only difference between me and them is I'm honest. I'm a conservative. I tell you who I'm voting for and why. No pretense, no make pretend, no